some people on the city council want to allow non-citizens to vote. Now, this to me um is bounds for locking these people up. I mean, I don't understand how they get away with this, even saying this out loud. I mean, it's a treasonous act in my book. I know it's not considered treason, but it should be considered treason. Like, you should be removed and escorted out in handcuffs because you are a danger to this country. That's what you are. And I don't care what anybody says about my opinion. That's my opinion. You need to be removed because you're not looking at the, at the, what's the word? At the benefit. You're not looking for the benefit of this country. I don't know what you're doing. John, you wanted to speak? You can
Yeah,
definitely speak. Go ahead.
yeah. I mean, this started back in 2022, early 2022. I was out with John Tobacco. We were doing Man on the Street for Wise Guys for his show on Newsmax, and we were talking to people back then, and we were running into people that were non-citizens that were just traveling into the country. And we interviewed everybody, and they were like, your country's crazy. Why would like people be able to just come here and vote? We would never let that happen in our country. And I mean, it's pretty basic. You're not part of this country, you're not a citizen of the country, you don't have a right to vote. Like, I don't have a right to vote in New York now that I have moved down to Florida. I don't have
Yeah.
a right to vote in California because I live in Florida. I mean, it's pretty basic. I don't go
I
to
mean, can I
Mexico
go to
and
Hong Kong? You don't see me going to Hong Kong and voting so I can go all around the country, all around the world, and just vote wherever the fuck I want?
that's correct.
That's
Apparently,
crazy.
if you want
Insanity.
if you want Cozy, you could go to China and vote against Xi Jinping. You just won't
Yeah.
make it out alive.
So this is pure chaos. New York is chaos. The people leading this city are either insane. I mean, I know they're not insane. They're just going along with the program. This is the program. This is the Great Reset. We all know it. People who understand, who have been studying, who've been paying attention, know that they're just not incompetent. These are evil people. These are very evil people that want the destruction of New York, destruction of this country. They're flooding it. They're it can only cause destabilization. These are enemies, enemies of the people, and they need to be removed.
And another thing, just real quick to drop in here, is this was already decided by the court, and it was struck down. And this is an appeal that's going forward. So they lost every step of the way, and they're still pushing. And from what I read briefly was this time Eric Adams didn't attach his name to it. And that probably means he's going to be federally indicted sooner than later.
Unreal.
So that's very interesting. I would be curious to learn what people's insights are in respect to how that ties into the conversation that we're diving into, because this is always a divided conversation in New York, well, everywhere, specifically when you see uh, that you go and you vote, and then it seems like sometimes your vote gets hijacked. So then where do you draw the line with people who say, I don't believe in the process? Where, if you can unmute yourself, is it Cozy? Okay, yeah, because it's the feedback. Um, so how do we figure this out, right? How do we move forward as a community here in New York, and specifically because some people obviously have lost faith in the system, and I understand why. I haven't lost faith in people. I think what has uh, inspired me is that there is this new vigor and and sort of blood and this common sense moving into politics. I think that there is an awakening of people who maybe are understanding I need to support. Maybe politics is not for me, but I'm going to support, for example, our friend Cara Castronova. We have it on video of people who, maybe personally they're not with a certain party. Maybe personally they're not even sure they believe in politics, but they believe in Cara. So as we dissect today's conversation, a couple of things to keep in mind is let's try to keep it brief because, in terms of like our points of views, let's be respectful, please, and keep in mind that this also can present as a teaching moment, as there's a lot of younger people who are looking for common sense conversations to even listen to, and we and people who think, who are questioners, who are the black sheep of society, we're, depending on the topic, we're put in camps that are paint us in extreme light. And how do we, as we discuss this topic, also sort of like even have a reflection point, because I think that that's been happening even with myself and the work that I present is, as you start listening to other perspectives and point of views, you start to realize, oh, I don't want to perpetuate a certain stereotype. I don't want to lead anyone anyway. And I guess with that, I'll pass it on to John and just say everybody's point of view is their point of view, and that's it. You know, nobody's co-signing on anyone. We're all here in the spirit of sharing and understanding and listening. So thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you, and John Matland.
Yeah, so you said something that caught my attention. You said that some people might not even believe in the system or voting or any of it, but they believe in Kara. And there was something that was similar when I ran. There was people that were against voting, but they were able to vote, so they still went ahead and did it. And they still were registered, and they were like, well, I'm registered and I'm going to help you get signatures and I'm going to vote my ass off, and get out there and get the word out there. And there's something, there's something between everyone's way of thinking that you can come up to a solution. And a solution is, like you said, everyone have their own opinion. That's fine. And where I am with this, and I keep saying that we are at a time where the system is about to crumble on itself, and it's by design. Kozi had referenced that as well. And what we have here is I can only give a scenario that paints this picture extremely, extremely easy. If you're walking in the middle of the woods and you step on a landmine and you blow your leg off and you're bleeding out, now your artery is severed, and each time your heart contracts, blood is squirting out of your body like Kill Bill. You can either, I'm going to give you multiple choice here. You can either A, cauterize, B, put a tourniquet on, or C, tourniquet and cauterize, or D, do nothing because you just want to give up. And that's what we're facing right now. We're watching an election that for many people, they think that it was robbed, that it was rigged. I am one of those people. I think that the elections are fixed, and I think that they're intended to be. When I was getting signatures, you can see how these voter rolls are not cleaned up. They're never cleaned up. They don't track who leaves the state. They don't track anything. They don't know what they're doing. You can go to a house, and there'll be registered Republicans, 25 people. But it was the past 7 people that owned the home. They never changed their address. They never updated anything, and all of those people are still listed there, which means all of those people can still vote in specific districts. They all can still vote. So the states, the cities, they're not doing their job on cleaning the voting roll. Now the next thing comes in. If you are going to fix an election, you need to manufacture votes, whichever way you're going to do it. And if the voting people do not come out and vote, well, it's very easy if you only have to get 25,000 more votes as opposed to 4 million more votes. So it makes it harder to fix. And what they're facing right now in the upcoming election, with having RFK in the mix, with having Donald Trump there and surging, and all of the tactics that have been employed to try to demolish his chance of running for office, and they've all backfired terribly. They're at a point where it's going to be really hard to fix this election due to the job Joe Biden's done and the amount of people that are going to vote for Trump. So if they had to, across 5 swing states and different cities where they were going to do this, and they were going to cook the books, it just went from having to cook the books at a 30% rate to maybe a 70% rate, and you just can't cook the books, and specifically while people are watching. So my handoff to the next speaker is going to be uh, very brief from this moment. It's we're bleeding out. We can either let ourselves bleed out or take every approach to stop the loss of blood, whether that's voting for somebody you say is the lesser of two evils or the one that will protect the country, whatever your viewpoint is, voting absolutely matters. And yeah, you can do everything like New York de jour is serving people. You can take every step to hold people to their oath. But if you're not going to partake in voting, you can't complain because at least you can put a stopgap in a firewall of us falling apart. I yield my time.
Thank you, Cozies.
Yeah, I mean, well, what did you want me to speak about specifically? Just like the voting and how I view it?
Yes.
Um, well, listen, we know the voting system is rigged, right? I know it. We all know it. I believe that it was rigged. I believe Donald Trump won last time. They stole it from him. But when people say, you know, don't vote or it's worthless, like I understand that, right? I do understand it. But there's a part of me that is still going to do it just because it's the most basic thing you can do. I'm not relying all of my faith in voting, but I just do it because I just check all the bases, right? I'm just doing it saying, okay, this is something that we should have, right? It should exist. It should be pure. I know it's not, but we're going to try anyway. At least we do the basics. I'm not saying like that's not all I think about. So we vote and that's it. My whole thing is about education. I believe the most powerful thing you can do is educate the public because once you educate people and the light bulb turns on, just like it turned on in me, just like it turned on in you and you and you and you and everybody listening, this certain light bulb, once it goes on, it can never shut off again. Like once we learned about, like I went through the first awakening was like, with 9/11, right? Once I learned about what happened and all the stuff that I suspected happened and all the lies, right? Um, you can't unsee that. And then when I got into the fluoride and the vaccines and all these rabbit holes I went into, you can never convince me again to do these actions. So once we inspire, once we turn on that light will never be extinguished again. Um, and that's the beauty is you become bulletproof. And from now on, we create this movement that gets more powerful and more powerful and more powerful. In the end, we win. It's just about consistency, dedication, and just spreading love and spreading knowledge. And that's how we defeat these demons.
Yeah, and I would like to add, and then something before we bring up Brenda, because I can't wait to hear her insight on this, is that it also gives you information when you go to vote. And last year, when I switched parties from independent to Republican, not last year, the year before, to vote for Zeldin, I found it curious that when I went to vote, and I don't know if it was a timing, but I miraculously, my name didn't appear on the roller sheet. They sent me to another place. It didn't appear there. They sent me to another location. It turned out to be that it needed to be in the first location that I was at in the first place. But they were looking me up on the computer, and it was almost like if the computer was playing games or because they would show me on the screen or what was happening. It was like weird, like weird things that even the poll workers couldn't really understand. Now, when I opened up my world, because at first you was like, is it because I just switched Republicans? Maybe, I don't know. But I think there was also some redistricting that might have taken place or something rezoning. I forgot the terminology. Someone who can fill me in can correct me, please. But
Redistricting, you were right.
thank you. And the poll workers, like the OG poll workers, were complaining. They were saying stories. There were many people that lost their opportunity to vote because there was so much reshuffling. Nobody knew where to go. If you thought you had an hour, you went there for lunch. Good luck. So when you see those things, besides whether or not I'm gonna vote for the Democrats or independents or Republicans, then you go and you see the mess for yourself. It 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 gives you something that is hard to not see again, because you see the system is broken. You hear from people who are working the polls saying, hey, the old school system was a lot more efficient. This thing is confusing everybody. Nobody knows anything. Like, everybody seems not to know something. And there was this big game of shuffle going around that mirrored many other stories that we were hearing being echoed in New York City, in other boroughs, and across other cities and states. So, with that, I yield, and I would love to invite Brenda to join the conversation. Please introduce yourself, and please share your insight.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Brenda. I would first like to say that my opinions are my own. I work with a lot of different organizations and groups and have different clients. And I just want to say my opinions are my own, clearly, but not so clearly it needs to be said in this day and age. So I have a lot to say about voting. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. I have a couple of opinions on it. When I hear people talk about um, the corruption and how things are askew, I agree. I don't disagree. But I see beyond that. I see that there's a part of me that feels it's almost like, you know, a child is going to lose, so they take their toys home. Like, I'm not going to win, so I'm not going to play. And then when I hear the argument, like, you're just voting for your slave master, like, maybe you're voting for your slave master. I'm not voting for my slave master. And I'm not saying I know it all. Maybe one day I'll wake up and find out I am in the matrix and I am a slave. But that's not what I'm doing. That's not the process. And I don't think that the system itself is the issue. It's the people running it. And part of that is our responsibility for not holding people accountable, for being complacent, for, rather going on a picnic than doing research, or incorporating research on a candidate at your picnic. And again, I'm not trying to personally criticize any human being. We're in a very complicated, complex situation, and a lot of people that we've trusted have manipulated us. And I do think this is a bigger thing. I think this is a spiritual battle we're in, which is another reason why I think voting is important, because I think besides the political process, I think there's something to be said energetically, spiritually, for people coming together at the same time. It's a ritual, it's an energy force. And I think that unfortunately what happened with J6, of people trying, that got hijacked, but that was supposed to be people trying to say, hey, we think we were cheated. And I think there's still a lot of people who don't realize that their voice does matter. And I think that, to me, I see evidence. Well, I see the evidence of the corruption that the people who are anti-voting give. I see that they're working really hard to cheat. So it must mean something. Like, I put in the chat a couple of articles about the New York City Council wanting to appeal being turned down to get non-citizens to vote. And if the vote didn't matter, why would they go through all that trouble? Everything's not a psyop. Not everything's not. Some things are simple. Voting matters, voting. And if it doesn't matter, we should make it matter. Because here's the other thing. If we don't have voting, how do we want to go back to kings and queens? Is that what people are suggesting? And that's another big issue I have with the non-voter crowd. Which, look, there's people who I really like a lot and I respect, who are on the non-voting train. But they don't give solutions. They just want to complain, complain, complain. And sometimes I'll be like, look, if that's how you feel, fine, but why are you trying to convince me to not vote? And they're like, I'm not trying to convince you. There's a bunch of people who, on their social media, they'll constantly be about how, if you're voting, you're a sucker. But then I invited them to come here to give their point of view. and they are not here. So I think to me, it's like you have to, not you have to, because I'm very much about free will and not trying to tell people what to do. I just share my opinion, and everybody's going to do what they're going to do anyway. But I think that it matters to vote. And I also think that there's ancestors who, of ours, of all of ours, who fought really hard for the right to vote. And I think it's disrespectful to them to just give it up and be so, like, blood was literally spilled so we could have the right to vote. And I don't think that we should give that up so easily and just be like, oh, it's a psyop. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, we're going to be a slave. And again, I don't mean to say that so disrespectfully, because when I hear those points, they make sense to me. But I just see more than that. And I think that voting matters. And whether or not you do it, it's up to you. But I know that in my area where I live in East Harlem, I am the co-founder of a block association. And if I'm able to get more people to go out and vote, when I call my council member or I talk to my assemblyman, it makes a difference in me being able to get things like more garbage cans for my neighborhood. And also, I don't think people realize that the power comes from the bottom up. I sort of lost my train of thought there. Sorry, I want to finish my thought and then I'll land my plane. I was talking about, if we don't vote, if we're going to go back to kings and queens, like, what are we going to do? Like, pick a name out of a hat? We have to have a structure. And so that's why I think voting is important. And thank you, and I yield. I hope that made sense. This will be a long
It
day.
it surely did. Just don't land your plane where P Diddy's landing his right now.
Did he land it? I think he's still missing, right? We haven't found him, or they haven't found him.
I would hope at this point it could have at least been like the OJ thing, because I remember being really young and I was watching that and I found it super interesting on the Bronco run, but we don't have a live feed, sadly, in 2024 of planes.
Yeah, you hit excellent points, and I just wanted to say that as you were talking, you literally took the words out of my mouth. If it wasn't important, they wouldn't be spending so much energy, money, time, bashing each other, and going through all this trouble. So it is important, and again, I agree with you. We must hold them accountable. That's our job, and we're not doing our job. We have to go in it more intensely and investigate, bring teams together, and go fully and say, we need these devices changed. If they're leaking information, if they're not functioning correctly, we must demand that it changes. I know they created this whole block where, they were saying like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, or like they were threatening to arrest, certain politicians for even questioning it. Um, that's a problem, and we need to fix that. If we can't fix that problem, then it's our fault. So I agree with you 1,000%.
And if I could also just add that when you go vote, a lot of times you're not just voting for uh, the main things you think you're voting for. There's amendments, there's bills on there. There might be judges that you could be voting for on there. And that's another story. That's another topic we could get into, because sometimes these bills and these amendments, the way they're written, you don't know voting yes means you agree with it, or voting yes means you don't agree with it, because it's worded so confusing. But that's up to us, we the people, to hold our public servants accountable and participate. And voting is part of that. And I really feel like, people are like, oh, voting's a psyop. I feel like anti-voting is a psyop. And I
Yeah,
yield.
that's a great point, Brenda. It kind of just triggers these other things. Like, I ask myself, what's getting in the way of voting besides the psyop that I feel a lot of us have bought into, uh, and also some of us have just been complacent. I'm sorry, like, I know that where we live is not a perfect place, and New York City is still just my home, and I love this place. I love that it feels alive. I love that there's a whole energy like in your face. I don't love it too. I don't love the feeling like I'm in a horror movie though, and it's that part is really sad to see that the policies that have been voted in that continue to be pushed, what are the conditions that have created this circumstance? There's so many legs to it, right? I mean, I'm not trying to dissect all of that here tonight, but just moving us to the very present moment, what's getting in the way of that? When we're at the booth to vote, and you're right, I'm looking at all these other names. I don't know who these judges are, never mind the language that I don't really fully understand. Now, what's getting in the way of us even understanding or even being motivated to understand who our local candidates are? Where are the pieces, the media pieces, the local newspapers? Like, those things have all sort of suffered for the many reasons that we can name, but they get in the way of people getting information. I yield.
15 minutes. That is the difference between knowing what's on the ballot and not. And it took me literally 15 minutes to dissect my ballot here in Boca Raton, Florida. And I did that a couple days before. I looked at who's running. I looked at, city council that was on the ballot and the two candidates, and it was who can go further left and say that businesses should have been shut down even further due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And watching this, and I said, I really left New York for New York and Florida. Let me tell you. But it gives me a good hope to keep my fight alive, I guess, and keeping it real is still in style. But it really comes down to 15 minutes. And when we say where are the news, Rose Angel, you said where's like the news getting the information out there? The news is biased, and I mean we know that for as long as we've been paying attention. But even like my local newspaper hated me, and they really hated me after our second protest at the sanitation department because their reporting, it seemed to be from what I gathered, their reporting or something along the lines of the what the NYPD was listening into. They thought that we were going to shut the Verrazano Bridge down, and like the misreporting, the article that was put out was protesters are on the way to shut the Verrazano Bridge down over COVID-19 mandates, and they left from the sanitation department. We didn't even know that that had happened. We just went over and we were standing at an overpass, and the amount of police that came out and state police, and they had helicopters up, and they had issued mandatory overtime for all the precincts because they thought they were going to have to clear protesters off the Verrazano Bridge. And we didn't even know it was happening. But that was all because of the Staten Island Advance, from what it seems, as far as I can tell. And, after I called them out on that, and then I announced that I was running, they did everything they could to really put me in the backseat and not let people know. And that's my opinion on it. So we're meant to only choose from who exists, that is put forward by the media and by the people that want you to know who's running. And the real people, and I could tell you why I find it very interesting on a, you could go to a major scale like Donald Trump and RFK. The establishment politicians on both sides hate both of those men. And that for me is a pre-approval process. If Trump doesn't win, I'll roll the dice with RFK at that point personally, because I'd say, okay, at least there's a chance. I mean, I'm not voting for him. I'm voting for Donald Trump, and I mean, everybody that's followed me in any shape, way, or form would know that. Uh, but RFK, it has that pre-approval. They're going against him at every turn and changing rules so he couldn't really be in the Democrat primary. There's reasons for this. And then as you go to a local level, look at who they're not talking about. Look at who's not backed by the party. Just simply take that 15 minutes, go to their website, read about them, and then decide, hey, they don't need $15 million to put yard signs everywhere and send me 8,000 mailers. All you got to do is literally go to their website and just read for 15 minutes. I yield.
I love it. Cozy?
Hey, Kevin Pasmino just jumped in, and he actually was running against Jeffrey Dinowitz. So, Kevin, if you would like to come and speak, jump on in, brother. I'll put you on as a speaker. Hold on. You want to accept the speaker request? You can come on if you feel like speaking tonight. Yeah, so I was very happy that Kevin jumped up and was willing to go after Dinowitz. Somebody needs to challenge Jeffrey Dinowitz, um, one of the worst human beings in New York City.
How's it going? Can you hear me?
How's it going, Kevin?
Pretty good, my
Please
man.
introduce yourself.
Yes. My name, as you know, I live in North Riverdale, and kind of been a little more active like, in the past couple of years, running for city council and for state assembly. Basically going after the Dinowitz fucking corruption, everything that's wrong with politics today in terms of just being in office, why we need term limits and whatnot. It's 30 years in office, and then he gets his son elected to, helps his son get elected to city council. He's obviously just like dominating the area and whatnot. So, complete scumbag in terms of like attacking our medical freedoms. And everybody here, I'm sure knows more. Everyone, especially you, Kozi, you was part of being a part of the medical freedom, like movement. Um, about how terrible Dennis is in that respect. Um, but yeah, just
And
got
please, yeah,
involved.
tell us more because not everybody is aware of Dinowitz's history and more so more than just about the alleged
Yeah,
racism and all of that.
yeah, sure. There's like the he basically has been attacking religious exemption. He's like basically one of like because of his tenure, I'm sure like that's the reason why. But the Democratic Party like leans in on him and a couple others to be the ones that are like push the bills that attack medical whether it's religious exemption. I think they were trying to repeal some parts of like the Civil Rights Act.
Hmm. And yeah, I don't want to take the host's topic off discussion. So basically, the conversation today was: is voting important? What do you believe? And just your thoughts on voting in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely important to be active 100%, and I think it's important for people to get active in the other parties as well. Like I'm a registered conservative. I'm friends with people in the Bronx GOP and whatnot, and I've helped Christy Marmorato. I helped her campaign and whatnot. So, but I am Bronx conservative. So I think that it's important for people even to also just lean into those other parties, because there's easier, you have battle access and whatnot, so you can basically bring back the voice of the people and whatnot. And the Bronx County Conservative Party has been doing its thing in terms of really diversifying and getting a lot of real community leaders and whatnot. Dion Powell, who's I think he's on the show frequently. He's one of our guys who gotten who's really kind of helped out right wing
Nice.
and whatnot. So it's important to definitely to be active in whatever way you possibly can.
Yeah, great, man.
But yeah, I don't want to take up the whole time either with everybody else. But
No, yeah, I just wanted you to jump on and say hello, introduce yourself, and feel free to say what you need.
no, I appreciate it. Like I said, running against them again this year, I feel good about it in terms of people waking up to everything that happened during COVID in terms of the infringement of our rights and whatnot, and how far away people are starting to look into our constitutional republic and whatnot, and really getting engaged in that respect. So it's a beautiful thing, and I think this is the year to do it. Um,
Awesome.
especially in the Bronx.
Thanks for stepping in the ring again.
Thanks again, man. Yeah, thank you, and thanks everybody on the on the show who put together. It's Cozy just put me onto it recently or whatever, but it's I've been seeing the clips and whatnot on social media, and it's you guys are fighting the good fight.
Thank you, brother.
Can you remind us, tell the community where they can learn more about your campaign?
Yeah, sure. I have a website. I'll share with you guys at some point. It's like I'm just about to have it go live. I'm just doing a couple edits on it and whatnot, but that I'll get that to you as soon as possible. I have like I can also have to share this anecdote link as well that has basically the same thing with my platform points and whatnot in terms of I'm basically trying to one bring back the voice to everybody and whatnot. So it's going against crime and the fact that like all these like crazy progressive um, you know ideologies in terms of defunding the police and embracing victimhood mentality and not empowerment and whatnot, and just completely going against law and order. Obviously need to right the ship with that respect. I think they need to be funded. They need to be also like psychologically need to be get that extra health benefits and whatnot, because they, just like people who go to war and whatnot, they see like the drugs of society, so that really wears down on a person. So and that's always like usually a bad apple that's gives a bad name to everybody else. And then accountability, I want term limits, in terms of I want to bring back the recall mechanism, and too, because there's no reason why the citizens, the constituents, should have to wait until an election to get rid of a leader who's not even abiding by the Constitution, not even abiding by their oath of office. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Brenda, did you want to add to the conversation?
Yes, I wanted to something that Kevin said reminded me of the the uniparty concept, right? And I think that the uniparty, we should actually not think of that as a bad thing. It's a bad thing when the uniparty is working just for their own interest, but really it isn't, shouldn't just be conservative against Republican against Democrat, like, we're some kind of varsity baseball team. And because then it gets um corrupted, for lack of a better term. It should always be policy over party. When you said to introduce ourselves earlier, I just said my name. I didn't give any of my quote unquote credentials, but I'm a professional event DJ. I am the co-founder of the Lexington Third Block Association, which is a non-partisan block association in East Harlem, New York, and Manhattan. And I am the former activism chair for Log Cabin Republicans New York, which is the gay and lesbian and their allies Republican group, which also welcomes conservatives and libertarians. And I left the Log Cabin Republicans to focus on um, Lexington Third Block Association. And in my reaching out to the representatives of the neighborhood, I started to work with the Democratic district leaders, and went to reach out to the Republican district leader, and there I couldn't find any, and so now I have the job of being the Republican district leader for the Manhattan GOP. I was recently appointed, and I want to be sure to keep like my activism, my different departments, separate. Like when the activities I do for Lexington Block Association, I want to make sure it's nonpartisan. But to me, that doesn't mean that we're not politically active. It just means everyone is welcome. I want everyone's voice, and not just me, the other members, the other co-founders. We want everyone to be included. And I think that one of the things that I'm finding when I'm reaching out to people, and now I just got appointed literally like 2 weeks ago to be the district leader for District 68. So I'm just starting, but and I'm learning kind of as I go along. But one of the things I told the members of the Log Cabin Republicans when I was the activism chair was, don't just vote Republican because we're Republican. We complain about the Democrats doing that. So let's not be hypocrites and do the same thing. It should always be policy over party. And if we really believe in our party and we believe in our candidates, we have nothing to worry about because they will be the best one on the ballot. And regardless, I think that uh, conservatives and Republicans have to face the fact that we are outnumbered, but we shouldn't be thinking like these people are our enemies. Like we have to come together. And even if it is our enemy, let's make peace treaties. Like ultimately things are breaking down, and even people who were, I got canceled a lot. I used to be a Democrat, but I lost a lot of clients when I came out as a Republican. But even those people are coming around and seeing that they're seeing the shenanigans, the veil is coming down. And I also have a lot of empathy for people who are still, I don't even like to say Democratic plantation because I even think that's degrading. To me, that's hypocritical. And I also think sometimes you got to call things out. Sometimes people don't like me because I say things really blunt, and I'm like, to me, it's not mean. I'm just being honest. So like, I believe in calling things out, but we don't have to be fighting each other. And it should be a uniparty. And I yield.
Thank you. That was really well said. Anyone else like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think, I mean, it should definitely be the platform over the party, and I think in general it would be awesome if we didn't even have any parties. Like we just basically just and with the money that they put forward with like the match can't funds, they could easily like fund a website platform where it's like a one shop stop for anybody who's running. So it's about getting on the ballot, make the ballot access like the main hurdle, and then at that point a complete level playing field, take money out of politics completely. That's what needs to happen. um
Yeah, but if I can interrupt you real quick, right?
yeah,
And I don't want to get off topic because this is about voting,
sure.
not campaigning. But, I see, and in the past 4 years that I've been involved in politics, I will see a lot of candidates who, you know, okay, you talk about the money and it's hard and all of that, and I get it. But people will go to campaign and then they want, if you can't get 400 signatures, how are you expecting to get 400 votes? If you can't get 400 people to give you $5, how do you expect to get votes? And I'm not saying, I know that maybe that's simplifying things. I think things are more complicated than that. But I think that another part of, I think people don't have um, belief in voting is because, and this is no offense to um, anyone who's running or who has run, is because we don't have enough candidates, and then somebody good will come up, but then the neighborhood doesn't know them. Like there's people who in my neighborhood who they want to run for city council. It's like you're not going to beat uh some of these other bigger people because you just popped up. Like nobody knows who you are. And I'm not talking about like celebrity name recognition. I'm talking about doing stuff in the community recognition. And I yield. I see John wants to speak.
100% agree with that. A lot of people want to run, and like even in my position when I ran, it was something that was, at first it was, how am I going to pull this off? And it's like, yeah, I helped open Max Public House, and that was a big thing. And it's like I stood up against the mandates at the hospital, and then that when they fired me for the completely a ridiculous reason when they said that I dropped a banner off the roof. But what that did was it gave me a platform. They inadvertently gave me a platform, and I was on the news, all these different news stations, and I was slowly getting awareness out. And then people started to hear about me because I was doing all these protests, standing up against all of the BS that was going on in general, with when it comes to the mandate. And it's, a lot of people said, how could you win? I know who you are. And but how can you beat, say for me, I was running against Max Rose. And a lot of people don't look into what the district looks like, or what the fact that Republican in the district before, they were trying to redistrict it and the courts turned it over because of the gerrymandering, which is just more election interference. When it happens either way, it's election interference. But they said, how could you do it? And I said, well, our district is Republican significantly by at least 9 points. And honestly, with the majority of it being in Staten Island, a loaf of Italian bread could beat Max Rose in a race for Congress at this point. And people thought I was joking, and I wasn't. It just came down to the real race was between me and Nicole Maliotakis. And even the people that did know about me said, how can you beat Nicole Maliotakis? But again, it comes back to 15 minutes. And this is across the nation at every level, federal, local. It doesn't matter. It's 15 minutes. Read about the candidates and don't say, I have to vote for this person because I know their name, or I have to vote for this person because they sent me enough pamphlets with their stupid face on it. No one wanted to see my stupid face a bunch of times. But that's what it comes down to. People go, I saw enough yard signs, so I might as well vote for that person. Plus, the letter next to their name is the letter I like. It's an R, or it's a D, or it's an I. They're independent. Read the website. And if we do that, we take money out of politics. And if you take money out of politics, if you wake up enough people and you can start doing it, again, it's 15 minutes and it's a website. And if you do that, the whole world changes, because then the special interests lose their ability to give the money, and money doesn't get you the office and keep you in power. Literally doing your job keeps you in office and representing, which is what they're supposed to do. I yield.
Yes, for those who are tuning in, if you would like to speak. We have a couple of people who are listening. You are more than welcomed to share. Something that I'd like to ask is your thoughts, and this is coming from Alex. What do you think could help bring people out there to vote?
If I could answer real quick, I think that people, one of the things is that people need to understand that there's not a quick fix. You're not going to go in and vote and then all of a sudden, oh, everything's fine. And then you never participate. People need, and it's not going to change overnight. And people need to be aware of that. You know, I think that people get, and one of the reasons people don't want to vote is because they think their voice doesn't matter. They think their vote doesn't matter. They think they're wasting their time. But to me, that's part of the psyop of taking their power away. And people need to know that they have that power. Their voice matters. Their vote matters, but it's not going to change. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, and it's only going to happen with their participation. How you get that message across, I don't know. Spaces like this is a start. Is what I think of, and I'm open. I would love to hear too because I'm going to be starting to, reach out to the Republicans in my area to get them to participate and vote, and conservatives, and I want to reach out to Democrats too. I want us all. I want the best for my neighborhood, and I think people too should focus on voting locally in their area. And I think that if you're voting for your school board, if you're voting for you're going to your community board meetings, if you're voting for your city council, you're going to your assembly, and you call them, get the phone number after they win, or even right now tomorrow, call me like, hey, hi, I'm Brenda. I just want to introduce myself. You're my I'm one of your constituents. Put me on your mailing list. Nice to meet you. And then keep in touch with them when something's going on. And like when then you see results, if you're working locally, you could see results that are tangible. And then you see that your voice matters, and the power it's like a flower growing up, like from the small roots up, and you just have to give yourself the growth. But then I guess it's like about getting the message out there. And I yield.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? John, Cozy?
I think I'm good. I just, again, would like to reiterate that voting and saying that not voting puts you on the system, takes you off the system. You still answer to that very system. And there's all the different tactics that you can go to try to make these officials stop their corruption. But start with start with voting and do all of them. If you take out the voting part of the equation, you're just exactly where you were at in the beginning, and it makes it easier for elections to be rigged, and it doesn't stop the purging of where we're at. It doesn't stop the loss of blood. You need to put bandages on the wound and vote, get the best person in and hold them to their oath, and not just accept the worst person and try to hold them to their oath.
Okay, we have a new speaker, Robert. Welcome.
What's up, everybody? How's everyone doing?
Good, good, good.
All
What's
right,
up,
yeah.
Robert?
What's up, guys? I'm usually not used to speaking, but let me talk a little bit. Just put my 2 cents in here. I love the conversation so far. um, some of the things that I think are important is like, yeah, I think we got to do, everything that we can, to keep pushing back, and voting is just, it's just one of those many things. That everything is like the system is starting to break. It's and I think, I'm pretty optimistic. I think things are moving in a very good direction. But I think there needs to be a collective push, and just a conversation around voter ID. Like, there needs to be more of it. Like, we the masses, we got to come together. We got to keep pushing voter ID, voter ID, voter ID, because the fact that we don't have voter ID is insane. Everyone knows it. Everyone says it like, "Yo, we don't have voter ID. What the hell is going on?" But at some point, I don't know when it is, but there's gonna have to be a collective push amongst the masses for voter ID. So I just wanted to share that, and I yield.
I like that you brought that up actually because that's always my pet peeve is like when I go to vote last 5 or 6 times 5 times I've been um, they never ask for my ID. And I'm always asking them, I'm like, you don't need my ID? They're like, no, just what's your address? So literally, I could just make believe that obviously I would never do this, but I'm saying I could make believe I'm my neighbor. If I see that they're not going to vote that day or they're out of town, I could just literally go in there and say their address and vote. Like, that's insanity that anybody can
Yeah,
do that. So we need to make sure that there's some kind of identification. Um,
yeah,
that's
and we have the migrants coming in now. Like, who knows how comfortable they are to walk into the booths? It's just like, but it's just insane. It's insane. You know. But I think I think what we need to do is just overwhelm the system and just everyone. So like John was saying, we all just got to go in and just overwhelm the system in November, and that's it. Whether it's Trump, RFK, whatever it is, whatever anti-establishment candidate it is, that's what's gonna have to be done.
absolutely, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in tonight. It's good to know that we can have a good space and we can go work around an hour. Last week it was 2 hours, but I feel pretty good. If anybody else has anything to say as we start winding down, I would suggest if you can add your handles so that people know where to follow you, subscribe, the intentions of this space and hosting these Twitter spaces is so people can get to know us on an individual level and hopefully, get to know us on our pages. And this is how we can start building community as it's been echoed here today. One person at a time, boots on the ground. It takes time and it's worth it because you know what? There's this huge loneliness epidemic. And when 2020 happened and many of our worlds got smaller, it's some of the people that are in this chat too that are with us here today that got brought into alignment. So there's parts about this journey that has been very difficult but has also been extremely blessed with what I can only attest is something that is of God. And so thank you for your presence. And I yield again, follow us at Cafecito Break, Cafecito Break 10.0 on Instagram. And then my sister has, and I have our separate business pages, and it's the Perez Sisters NYC or on Substack, Crystal Sage Wisdom. Thank you so much for being with us. And look out for announcements for the upcoming one. We don't know if we'll have one next week. I'll check. I'll talk to the fellas. But please, closing remarks, John.
Yeah, I just voted in Florida for the first time, and it was my first time with voter ID. And the process was extremely easy. You show your ID, they verify it, you sign, they make sure it matches the signature that is on your ID. Then they go to the next phase where they print up a receipt that shows your party affiliation and what ballot you're going to get for the primary. The person then next person in line reviews it with you, and you have to actually initial and accept that ballot. So they give you the correct one, and it's pretty straightforward. And it's
That's racist, John. That's very
well,
racist of them.
correct, and that was what I was just going to touch on. The BS narrative. A lot of times people project what they really and truly are and how they feel. And what I've seen out of Democrats that still argue that voter ID is racist, that means it's racist to get
because
cigarettes.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
because my
racist. Go, Cozy. What you got to say?
because minorities, can't figure it out, right? Because they can't figure out how to get a license. I mean, what are they even saying, man?
The most
What are they saying?
racist. That is the most racist shit
I
I've ever
know.
heard in my life,
But
and
that's what they say.
I know I cringe when I hear it, and I'm like, we're at a point where I've been I've been called at the the illegal immigrant protests. I Somebody posted, I think it was freaking Talia, but she posted white nationalist John Matlin. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm the person that thinks that everybody knows how to get an ID, and I'm the white nationalist. Okay, so I mean, the whole thing is racism's been blown out of proportion for a very long time and utilized to continue to further divide us, and voter ID is just not racist. It's just being utilized that way, and in itself the whole idea is racist. Voter ID works, it needs to be implemented. I yield. Thank you for everyone for joining. We the people are the news. Find me. If not, don't worry, I'll see you here anyway.
Thank you, Cozy.
Nothing much. I just want to say, guys, help Kara Kashanova win, get her on the ballot. I went to Astoria, got her a whole bunch of signatures. I got lucky because I went to a basketball game. Try to find an event, where you find Republicans, and get her on that ballot, man. She can destroy these other Republicans when she debates them. And then, it is a hard task to beat the Democrat, but I think that she can do it. We just got to back her, and time is ticking. She has less than a week, I believe. Uh, Please just bust your asses for a day for her. Just one day. If we all did one day, we can get that woman on the ballot, and she's worth it. She's worth it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Robert, closing comments?
Uh, buckle up. It's gonna be an interesting 8 months. It's time to come together and stay stoic, level-headed, keep fighting, and then the fight doesn't stop after that. At some point, there's gonna be like this whole rebuilding process. So let's keep in touch. Let's keep working together. Let's unite. And peace and love, everyone.
Thank you. Brenda?
Thank you for having me on, and God bless everyone. And we just gotta do the best we can do. We can't force anybody to do anything. We can just show them, it's like, hey, I think this is a good idea. What do you think? And all come together. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kevin?
Just yeah, thanks for what you guys are doing here. Thanks for having me on and whatnot. And, definitely be stopping by, dropping by more often. I definitely echo Robert's sentiment. It's going to be a crazy year and whatnot. So I think it's just important to keep level-headed. And I think it's about we the people coming together. It's really not about party lines. It's about the moderate voice and whatnot, and just trying to see past all the propaganda and really just you know find the things that unite us. And I feel like a lot of times the biggest part of communication is miscommunication, and like having those little moments where you're like, okay, and then you have to work your way out of that and kind of really understand where someone's coming from and why they feel a certain way. And then you find that, like, I could relate to that, in that storyline, or from this perspective. So I think when we do that, we see that we have a lot more in common than we don't. So, but yeah, again, thanks so much for doing what you guys are doing.
Well said. And please be on the lookout. We may do another space upcoming Monday, but there are definitely spaces that are being uh, talked about in the works. Specifically, there's going to be a part 2 of our space from last week. Hashtag con sofrito break. Thanks to John Matland. And for you to understand that joke, you're going to have to visit us on IG.
That's thanks to Sal Greco.
Yes, yes, but the meme came together. Um, and then we also want to talk about the unfolding migrant crisis and the crime in the city that is hard to ignore, and sort of things like that. And we also do want to get into maybe even talking within some of these spaces of also like maybe some like tips, like, hey, that so that we can really start getting into the mindset of just being boots on the ground. A lot of people, the elders, don't have access to these tools, and it's going to be sort of helpful for some of us to that those who can to be little mouthpieces. Talk to the doñita down the street, the bodeguero, a friendly conversation. You start to see that we can reach more people that way. And who knows how many people's lives we can touch. Thank you so much for your presence.